everyone. I'm Lena Banks, certified financial planning professional, small business coach, and investor coming to you from Austin, Texas. Thanks to everyone for listening and watching the show. I am so excited you're joining me for another episode of Financial Therapy. Before we get started, please don't forget to like us, give us a hopefully great review, and subscribe so you don't miss a thing. Today's episode is a really interesting one. I've been seeing a lot of stories lately about money, happiness, dating, relationships. And so this episode is all about how money actually just does not buy you happiness. But there's like kind of a sad caveat that money can buy you connection and kind of like help buy you love. So we're going to talk a little bit about that today because we all desire connection and healthy relationships. And, you know, like I said, there have just been so many stories and studies out lately that talk about how, you know, money does not actually benefit your happiness. It's really relationships that have the largest effect on your overall happiness and wellness in life. But the thing is, sometimes you need that money to get that relationship. So let's talk about it, and you know, maybe we'll have some revelations here over the course of the show. But I really wanted to bring this up because it seems to be kind of a driving factor in a lot of things that I'm seeing right now, hearing right now, and sometimes it just helps to acknowledge that it's really a thing and that what you're seeing is not just in your own head. It's actually a real struggle that people are having, is how to connect, how to build relationships when you don't have a lot of expendable income. So money can't buy you happiness. From a story on Vice News and about a study that recently came out, research comparing people who pursued social goals versus personal growth goals found that investing in their relationships supported greater gains in happiness than people who focused on just changing themselves or buying more things or investing, so to speak, in themselves. So the biggest predictor of happiness isn't money, it isn't your looks, it isn't a better job, it's actually relationship satisfaction. And so this is according to the Harvard Study of Adult Development, now in its 87th year and still the longest running scientific study of its kind. The quality of a person's relationships is the single strongest predictor of happiness and health across an entire lifetime. So that's really exciting. Great, we don't have to have a whole lot of money. The study, which began in 1938 and eventually expanded to more than 2,500 participants, including spouses, descendants, and others, found that people with strong supportive relationships were happier, healthier, and lived longer than those without them. So this is not a soft finding. This is a data point that hopefully makes us all kind of rethink how we're spending our weekends, how we're spending our time, and even how we're spending our money. It doesn't cost us money to build strong relationships necessarily, especially with family members and with close friends. And so it's really important that we kind of focus on the idea that more money does not necessarily mean more happiness. So that's great, but then I came across a new survey of 2,000 Americans commissioned by consumer finance app Current and conducted by Talker Research, found that the average respondent believes a person needs to earn $106,000 plus a year before true love is within reach. So baby boomers were apparently the only generation to set that bar below six figures. And I think part of that, the generational split here, is basically that people are saying that their own finances have personally kept them from finding love or deep relationships simply because they're not able to afford things like dating, going out, etc. We did an episode on the cost of connection and then a follow-up episode because many times you're spending in the thousands of dollars to do extracurricular activities, social activities, even just with friends, doing hobbies and things like that that you want to use to engage with people. And then separate from that, there's the whole dating aspect, which is another few $1,000s a year that people could be spending. And especially if you're in a kind of traditional role where you are the guy and you're expected to pay for the dates, that can be a huge expenditure that you are just not interested or capable of making in order to find love, to find that healthy, happy relationship. And so this is like real life. 78% of Gen Z respondents said a partner's salary will determine whether they can find true love. And that's compared with 32% of baby boomers. So I think it really speaks to today's economy and the fact that things are just kind of unaffordable out there. If you're going to try and do things in real life, that is going to cost you. 31% of respondents to this survey by Talker Research said that they're going on fewer dates in 2026. Half of respondents would go on more if they actually could afford it. Men reported the affordability pinch more than women, 60% to 46%, which goes back to what I was saying earlier about the kind of expectation that the man is supposed to pay for dates. And that makes some sense because from the survey, 49% of respondents still believe the man should cover the first date, at least the first date. And that's a view that men shared at 59%, compared to only 42% of women. So FYI, guys, maybe that's not necessarily a viewpoint that all women share. You got to go out there and find a woman who's willing to go Dutch with you on that date. But it's really interesting to hear that like dating just is more expensive and everybody's finding it to be so, and that actually is hindering people from going out on dates because they just don't feel like they can afford to provide the experience that might be expected on said date. But we're even talking about relationships with friends and people like that. In the cost of connection episode, we talked about the average spend on hobbies and things like that is just under $3,000 a year, and that's not chump change either. So if you're spending a couple of $100 to $300 a month just to do hobbies that connect you socially with friends, even friends of the same sex, that is a huge expenditure, and that's the cost of keeping connected and engaged in this society. And it may be too high a cost to bear to actually keep and maintain those relationships. It's really hard also to set boundaries with folks that you're just getting to know or just getting to be friends with. If they're going out to get drinks, or they're going to, an event, or even if they're going to travel or something like that, and you've been cultivating this relationship, and then you've got to say, oh no, I can't afford to do that. It's like a want moment for that relationship. It doesn't have to be, and I think that's important to put out there, is that obviously, or maybe not obviously, but true friends, if you truly have things in common with people and you can find those social activities that don't cost you an arm and a leg, hopefully they would still be your friend and they would still want to hang out and develop a more intimate relationship with you, whether that's a friend relationship or a romantic relationship. So one more thing about this money and relationships, romantic relationships thing, is that among 15% of the respondents who have ended a relationship over money, the $106,000 in income was actually beside the point. Constant borrowing and spending came up in 30% of those breakups, or around 27% respectively. So we're talking about like general financial irresponsibility made up for 27% of those breakups. Constant borrowing and kind of always needing money was 30% of the reason for those breakups. And so we have to also understand that relationships can be problematic if you recognize or realize that the person you're in relationship with is just not good at managing their finances, or is always kind of in need when it comes to money. And so, it's not just that we have a perception that you need to earn over 6 figures in order to find love and basically go out on dates and kind of be unencumbered in finding a relationship. We also have some serious issues when it comes to being in a relationship with someone who's maybe not the best at managing the money in the first place. So, Fidelity's 2024 Couples and Money Study also found that 45% of partners do argue about money at least occasionally. So that's like half of us in relationships are arguing at some point about some sort of financial situation. So keeping but also maintaining relationships really is made better by having a financial plan, by being financially well and kind of whole in yourself. And that's a really interesting thing to contemplate. So while money cannot buy you happiness, money does feed into how happy we actually are in getting and keeping our relationships healthy. So the through line through all of this data is pretty consistent. What actually ends relationships is someone who does not have a great financial plan. But what can start relationships might be something much less than a 6-figure income, and can actually be reconciled if perhaps we're a little more truthful with the people we want to be in relationship with. And so I would really encourage you all to go out, find some cheap hobbies, some cheap ways to connect with people, go for a walk, join a running club, do things, activities that are low cost. I'm a big fan of karaoke. Do things that bring you joy and help you connect with other people without spending a fortune, and you will find your tribe. So this has been Money Can't Buy You Happiness, but it maybe helps when we're in relationship to be financially well. So here's to being financially well. Thank you for joining me this week for Financial Therapy, and I'll see you next week for another episode.